when we still feared the dark. Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Please like and subscribe so I can tell more interesting stories. Now let's get started. I was not yet old enough to remember my first winter, but my bones tell me I survived it. We didn't measure time then, not in moons or seasons, not in numbers or names. Time was marked by how long you could keep your feet from freezing, how far you had to crawl before the saber-tooth gave up, or how loud the wolves cried when the sky turned black. That was time. That was memory. Back then, the night didn't fall, it swallowed. We were prey, not just to beasts, but to cold, to hunger, to that awful loneliness that comes when you can't see your own hand, but you hear the breathing of something else just outside the dark. You ever try sleeping when your sister is shivering beside you and your stomach sounds like it's chewing itself? I wouldn't recommend it. There were 13 of us in my group, 4 elders, 7 hunters, and 2 little ones who only cried when they were awake. No one dared speak once the sun dropped, not unless you wanted to risk drawing attention from the outside, or worse, from the inside of your own head, fear echoed. Thoughts did weird things in the dark. I once imagined the wind whispering my name and I followed it. Got lost for 2 days. Came back covered in scratches, half-starved, and convinced trees could lie. That's not even the weirdest part. One time we found a red rock shaped like a fish's eye in the stream. Glowed for no reason. I tried keeping it for luck. 2 of our goats died the same night. I threw it back and never looked again. Historians still debate whether early humans saw fire as a god or a tool. I say it was both. Because before we had it, the world was ruled by shadows and chance. You couldn't plan. You couldn't build. You just survived. Barely. Our shelters were little more than rock piles and thatched branches shoved into the side of a hill. If you could feel your feet in the morning, you called that a good day. We huddled in piles, using each other's breath like blankets. I shared my space with my brother Tua. Big Quiet never said more than 10 words in a day, but I trusted him more than I trusted stars. Tua had this way of blinking real slow, like he could see things happening before they happened. One night, when the wind was clawing through the gaps in our shelter, he whispered, "It will come from the sky." I thought he meant rain or death. He meant fire. The elders told stories about the light that once fell to earth. They said fire was a punishment for stealing meat from the gods. They said it devoured whole trees in seconds and left behind bones of black. One said it danced. One said it screamed, and yet no one denied that it kept the beasts away. Funny, right? We were terrified of it, and yet we prayed it would come back. Without it, we didn't just fear dying. We feared living like this forever, cold, weak, blind. So every time the clouds rolled in and the thunder growled, we watched not for rain, but for flame. Tua and I took turns on the lookout rock. We were the youngest. That meant expendable. If something ate us, the tribe would grieve, sure, but they wouldn't starve. That's love in its oldest form, practical. One night, the sky didn't just grumble. It tore open. The sound was louder than anything I'd ever heard, like the sky itself had cracked in two. Then came the light, a brilliant white slash that turned night into noon for half a breath. And then the forest caught fire. We saw it from the lookout. A single tree lit up like it had swallowed the sun. Orange, blue, furious. The flames danced just like the elders said, and I swear they screamed too. Everyone ran, except Tua. He just stood there, face lit, like a statue made of gold and shadow, and said, "It has come." We didn't know what to do. Half the group wanted to run. The other half said it was a curse. Me, I just stared. My skin felt like it was being pulled toward that light. That was the night we stopped fearing only the dark We began fearing what might live inside the light too. But here's the twist. It wasn't the fire that scared me most. It was what I saw standing beside it. A small figure, pale, human-shaped, and gone in an instant. To this day, I don't know if it was real. Tu said he saw it too. But Tu also thought animals spoke in dreams, so who knows? Still, we both agreed on one thing. The fire had come, and it wasn't going away. The day lightning changed everything. You ever hear a tree scream? Not the wind through the leaves, not the crack of a branch breaking. I mean a full, low groaning wail that sounds like the world is giving birth to something terrible. That's what we heard as we ran through the forest chasing fire. That night, the lightning didn't just strike one tree. It carved its way down a whole line of them, like the sky had drawn a burning path straight through the woods. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. And it was the only thing any of us had ever seen that made the darkness back off. Tu ran, first always faster than me, always moving like he already knew the ending to a story the rest of us were just beginning. I followed my feet, slicing on sharp bark and ash. Smoke made my eyes scream. My breath burned worse than the air. But we didn't stop. The elders shouted behind us, words like curse and madness. But their voices grew smaller the closer we got to the flames. And then, there it was, a burning branch still whole lying on the ground, like some fallen spear from the gods. It crackled, hissed, spat, tiny sparks at the ground, like it was angry to be dying. But it was still alive, and it didn't run. Tu didn't ask. He didn't pause. He just reached out. Now, here's where most stories would say, he reached, with trembling hands. But Tu, his hands didn't shake. Mine did. My whole body did. I was pretty sure if I even looked at the fire too long, it would leap up and bite my face off. He picked up the branch, and nothing happened. No thunder, no divine punishment, no voice from the clouds telling us we were doomed. Just the sound of flame chewing through bark. Historians still debate whether early humans first used fire for cooking or for protection. But standing there watching my brother cradle a flaming stick like a newborn, I didn't care about theories. I cared that we had light, and the animals didn't. We walked slowly back toward the others, holding the fire between us like a secret. The elders didn't know whether to scream or kneel. My mother crossed her arms and muttered a word I'd never heard before theft. She said we'd stolen from the gods and we'd pay in blood. I told her we were already bleeding every day, and the gods never sent help before. That didn't go over well. Still, they let us keep it. Not because they believed in us, but because they were cold. We learned quickly that fire was as hungry as we were. You couldn't just leave it alone. You had to feed it, and it wasn't picky twigs. Grass-dried dung, old bones, even our own hair clippings. Fire would eat anything. That night, no one slept. We gathered around it, our eyes wide, our skin warm for the first time in forever. It cast shadows that moved like they were telling stories we hadn't learned yet. One of the kids started clapping. The elders told him to hush, but he kept doing it anyway. That was the first drum, probably. A kid clapping at the fire. My sister usually silent leaned close and whispered, "It smells like cooked goat." We laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the first time in weeks we weren't crying. That's when it happened. Too curious as ever, pulled a strip of raw meat from his pouch and held it over the fire with a flat rock. I know what you're thinking. Was he a genius or just hungry? The answer is yes. At first it just sizzled. Then it smoked. Then, oh gods, the smell. Rich, deep, almost sweet. The little one tried to lunge for it. I smacked his hand. Toast stared at the meat like it was changing him. Then he handed it to me. I bit in, and the world changed. Cooked food didn't just taste better. It felt safer. easier to chew, warmer in the stomach, less like struggle, more like home. Bizarre fact. Some scientists now say cooked food might be what allowed our brains to grow so large. Less energy spent on chewing raw meat, more energy for thoughts. So yeah, maybe two invented intelligence by grilling a squirrel. Who knows? The elders still weren't sure. They circled the fire like wolves, sniffing, cautious. Some refused to eat the cooked meat. One old man even rubbed ash on his face and said the fire was eating our soul. Then again, he also thought dreams came from birds living in our heads. By morning, the branch was nothing but black dust, and we realized something truly awful. Fire dies. If we didn't feed it, protect it, shelter it, it left. Just like the sun, just like people. So we panicked. We ran back to the forest, searching for more burning trees, more sparks, more anything. But the storm was over. The world had gone back to damp and cold. Two stared at the ash pile for hours. Then he said, "We need to make it again." Make it? I laughed. Hard. Like spit through the nose kind of laugh. "You want to make lightning?" He didn't answer. But the next day, he found two rocks, one red, one gray, and started smashing them together. We thought he'd gone mad. He didn't care. That's when I knew. Tu wasn't afraid of fire. He was in love with it. And that is when everything began to change, learning to steal the flame. Tu didn't give up on fire. While the rest of us returned to gathering roots and scaring birds off berry bushes, he stayed near the ash. He poked it, blew into it, smushed it between his fingers. I swear he looked at it like it had whispered secrets no one else could hear. He carried those rocks everywhere, like they were sacred objects. He called one sharp and the other angry. He believed they had spirits, which in hindsight might have just been a clever excuse for bashing them together all day, without anyone telling him to go hunt. And then one afternoon, boom, not fire exactly, but a spark, a real one. It leapt out from the stone like a tiny comet, landed in a pile of dried moss, and fizzled away. But that little spark, that was everything. I didn't even believe it at first. I told him he probably imagined it. So naturally, he threw the rock at my foot. The second time, I watched closely. When the spark jumped again, we both screamed like children seeing a ghost, and then we did something so incredibly dumb. We tried to breathe the spark into fire. Literally. We took turns huffing and puffing into the moss pile until our faces were red and we nearly passed out. And somehow it worked. A tiny ember glowed at the center, like a heartbeat in a dry lung. Then it flickered. Then it caught. And just like that, we had stolen the sky. Historians still debate whether early humans learned fire from nature or invented it through friction and sparks. All I know is that my brother figured it out by accident and obsession. That night, we didn't sleep. We fed the fire twigs leaves dry fur from an old pelt. We even found a dead beetle and sacrificed it. Tu said it added flavor. I think he just hated beetles. Word spread quickly. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be near the fire, not just for warmth, but for light. It became the place where stories happened, where bruises got cleaned, where elders forgot their fears for a few minutes and whispered dreams they'd never dared speak aloud before. I started watching people, the way they leaned toward the flames like it could answer questions. One woman asked it why her son died in the flood. Another held her baby near the warmth and said, "He'll live now." It was a shift I didn't expect. Fire had become more than survival. It was belief. It was a symbol. A promise that tomorrow might not suck quite as bad. Bizarre fact. Some tribes, even thousands of years later, believed that fire wasn't just sacred. It had moods. If it crackled too loud, it meant anger. If it went out too quickly, it meant betrayal. We weren't that far off. We talked to it like it could hear us. I'm pretty sure Tu tried to marry it once, but it wasn't all peace and wisdom. Fire had needs. We learned the hard way that some things were too dry, too oily, too angry. One time, we tossed in the bladder of a dead goat. It exploded, like full-on boom, burned half my eyebrow off, took days to grow back. For weeks, kids in our group mimicked the sound to scare each other. Goat Blast became the tribe's first unofficial joke. Still, we got better. We built a pit for it, surrounded it with stones, named it well. Most of us just called it the Worm, but one of the hunters insisted on calling it Flesh Eater, which frankly didn't help anyone sleep. We had to figure out shifts. You couldn't just let it burn untended. So we created the first watch system. 2 people, every night. No sleeping, just sitting, feeding, protecting. The fire wasn't ours, it was borrowed, and we had to prove we were worthy of keeping it. And then came the visitors, a man and a woman from a distant clan drawn in by the light. Their clothes were thinner. They looked half dead. No weapons, just eyes wide and desperate. Tu didn't hesitate. He motioned for them to sit, gave them roasted meat, let them warm their hands. Later, the elders called it reckless, said they could have been spies or cursed, said we should have left them to freeze. Tu told them the fire didn't belong to us. He said warmth should never be hoarded. They didn't like that, but they didn't argue either. The visitors stayed for 3 nights. On the 4th, they left with a lit branch wrapped in wool and moss, a piece of our flame. They walked off into the woods like it was their first time carrying a star. I watched them disappear and felt something strange: pride. Historians argue about when humans first shared fire with other tribes, whether it was a gift, a bribe, or a threat. For us, it was all 3. Fire gave us something bigger than heat. It gave us power, and power always makes things complicated, because not everyone in our group agreed. Some said we should keep fire secret, only our bloodline, only our name. One hunter carved symbols into the stone beside the fire pit and said, "This is our magic." No one else. I told him the fire didn't care whose name was on the rock. He tried to punch me, missed, fell into a patch of thorns. Tuh called it a sign from the flames, but inside I started to worry. We had fire, but now we had rules, politics, suspicion. Maybe we hadn't stolen the sky after all. Maybe it had tricked us into thinking we were bigger than we were. Still, as I sat beside the flames that night, watching the sparks float upward, like lost thoughts, I knew one thing. We would never go back to the dark, not willingly. The night the fire fought back. They say you should never get too close to the things you worship. Well, we learned that the hard way. It started with the wind, a dry, howling thing that slid down from the hills like it was late to a funeral. Leaves turned brittle. Grass snapped underfoot. Even the animals grew quiet. No hoots, no growls, just the crackle of a world that felt like it was waiting for something awful to happen. We should have listened, but instead, we fed the fire. Too much. The pile grew too high, too fast. Dried roots, animal fat, some wood we didn't recognize. It smoked like it was choking on itself. But we didn't stop. We were proud, arrogant. We had turned sparks into warmth meat, into memory fear, into faith. So when the flames started climbing higher than usual, we thought it was a sign, some blessing from whatever sky being we'd borrowed it from. It wasn't. The fire spilled. A log rolled from the pit, split in half, and landed on the dry moss along the cave edge. 1 second, it was just glowing. The next, it roared. It was like watching a beast wake up. Flames leapt, grabbed at our walls, clawed their way toward the stacked furs and bones. People screamed. One child ran toward it with water from his hands. The fire laughed at him. We scrambled. We kicked dust. flung water skins, tried to smother it with cloaks. It fought back. It didn't just burn. It moved, like it had a mind of its own. Like it remembered we were once afraid of it, and now it wanted revenge. Two shouted for everyone to get out. I stayed behind, trying to drag a half-burned pelt off the wall before it spread. That's when the roof gave. A chunk of stone broke free and slammed into the fire pit. Sparks erupted, dancing up into the air like angry insects. My leg got caught. Tuh pulled me free. We barely made it out. The cave, the one we'd called home for 3 winters, collapsed behind us. Smoke curled out like a final exhale. We stood in silence, 25 of us now, watching our history turn to ash. The fire, our greatest gift, had nearly killed us. Historians still debate whether early fire disasters created the need for separate hearths, fire pits, and the first primitive safety practices. Personally, I think they came from people like us, who stared at the ruins of their lives and muttered, "Maybe let's not build everything out of dry moss next time." The tribe was split. Half said fire had turned on us, that it was jealous, that it wanted blood. One elder, who had always disliked Tuh, said we should never have stolen it from the storm. "You don't take lightning and expect rainbows," he muttered. The other half, led by me and my half-burned foot, said we'd made a mistake, but that didn't mean we give it up. Tuh didn't say much, just sat near a small spark he'd managed to save, tucked in a mound of ember-soaked dirt. He called it Ash Child. We all thought that was weird, but we let it slide. Guy had just saved my life. For 3 nights, we didn't light a big fire, just that one ember. We watched it like it was a sick relative. No one spoke loud. No one laughed. We were afraid again. That's when the dreams started. One woman claimed she saw flames crawling across her skin like spiders. Another said the fire whispered her brother's name, and her brother had died seasons ago. Even I had one. A dream where the fire had eyes, human eyes, and they were crying. Historians suggest that early spiritual beliefs may have evolved from traumatic events like this when nature behaved in ways we couldn't explain. I don't know if fire is a god, but I know it doesn't forget. Still, we couldn't stay in the cold, so we rebuilt. Not the same way. Wider circles separate cooking pit rocks, placed like guardians around the perimeter. We invented the first "don't touch that" zone, mostly by yelling at the kids every time they got too close. We also made a new rule: no more feeding the fire alone. That may have been the first time humans invented responsibility, and weirdly it worked. The fire grew slowly, steadily. We weren't trying to impress it anymore. We were trying to live with it. And then one day it rained. Real rain, heavy, pure, no fire, just water. We huddled under our new shelter, still terrified it would wash everything away. It didn't. Instead, it cooled the ground, softened the air, made the smoke less choking. Tuh turned to me and said, "Maybe the sky forgives." I said, "Maybe it's just tired of watching us screw up." We laughed. Bizarre fact, in some parts of the ancient world, people used to talk to fire, offering it butter blood, or even songs, believing it could feel emotion. We did the same. We whispered to it at night, apologized when it coughed, thanked it when it stayed small and steady. Because here's the truth: fire wasn't evil. Fire wasn't good. It was wild, like us. That's when I realized we hadn't tamed fire. We'd met it halfway. And that's how we learned not just to steal it, but to live with it. Keeping it alive became our religion. You ever babysit a god? Because that's what keeping fire felt like. We didn't just tend it, we worshipped it. Not in the way temples or scrolls would come later, but in the quiet, desperate way a person might cling to breath in a deep cave. It became the center of everything, a flickering, breathing thing we bowed to without ever saying the word prayer. Tuh called it the mouth that never stops eating. I called it the thing that made us not die. Same sentiment. Each night we circled it. Never too close, not after what happened in the cave, but close enough to feel its breath on our skin. Our hair always smelled of ash. Our hands were forever blackened. But the light it made the darkness seem like a memory. We created shifts. 4 people per night rotating every few hours. Someone always awake. Someone always watching. If you let the fire go out on your watch, well, let's just say you'd better like sleeping far from the group, or with your face covered in raccoon urine, which was apparently the traditional punishment. Don't ask how we figured that out. It wasn't just duty, it was sacred. We built tools just to feed it, shaped sticks for turning meat, carved bowls to carry coals. We even hollowed a long log so we could blow air into the embers without getting scorched eyebrows. 2 called it the breath tube. I called it better than losing my eyelashes again. One of the elders, yes, the same one who thought dreams came from birds, began marking fire stories on stone walls. Lines, dots, spirals. Said they were fire's language. No one understood them. But everyone nodded like, "Sure, old man, keep scratching rocks." Historians still debate whether this kind of symbolic communication led to writing systems. All I know is the stories made us feel safer, like the fire could hear us and we needed to keep it entertained. We started telling tales to it. Every night, someone would speak while feeding the flames. Stories about the sky, about animals who stole warmth, about people who turned into fire when they died. We made rules too. Never speak ill of the fire near the fire. Never leave it without food. Never let it hear you cry. That third one, mine, I made it up. But people took it seriously because we needed fire to believe we were strong. And the weird thing is it worked. We stopped shivering through the nights. We started cooking everything, not just meat roots, bugs, even a mushroom that made the elder laugh so hard he passed out. Tuh swore the mushroom told him secrets. I said maybe it told him to stop licking frogs. But fire gave us something more than food and warmth. It gave us routine. Every morning started the same clean, the ashes feed the embers, check the woodpile. Every night ended the same. Gather around, speak your truth. Toss a twig in before sleep. It made time real, predictable, safe. It even changed how we looked at death. When someone passed, and it happened more often than I want to remember, we burned their furs, sometimes their tools. One woman insisted we toss her husband's shoes in too, because he always said fire was the only thing that could handle his smell. That became a ritual, a small one, but real. The fire became the line between what we were and what we might become. Bizarre fact. There's a tribe far away that believes fire holds the soul between this life and the next, that it purifies, that it listens. I believe that. Not because of some ceremony, but because one night, I swear it whispered my name, soft, like breath on my neck. I didn't tell anyone. Tu would have believed me, but then he would have made a fire song about it. And frankly, he was a terrible singer. Still, the fire changed him. He started sleeping less, staring at the coals longer. Sometimes I'd catch him drawing circles in the dirt and murmuring things like, "What else can it do?" That's when he started experimenting. He'd drip animal fat onto stones and watch it pop. He tried sealing meat in clay, baking it beside the fire, said it tasted less angry. He invented a spit by tying bone to stick. At some point, he used bark and mud to build a small oven. I called it the burn box. It worked. Historians often refer to this as the birth of cooking technology, but for us, it was just Tu being too curious, slightly unhinged, and allergic to boredom. Others followed him. We became builders, thinkers. A group of us even made a wind wall using rocks and woven grass to keep sparks from flying too far. That's when it hit me. The fire was changing not just our bodies, but our minds. We were becoming something else. Before, fire survival was a sprint, a frantic claw through each day. After fire, it became a walk, slower, steady, full of space for thought. And with thought came stories. Stories became memory. Memory became meaning. Meaning became belief. So yes, we started worshiping the fire. Not with gold, not with sacrifice, just with care. The way you worship anything that saves your life again and again and again. One girl sang to it every morning. One man danced around it every moon. One child gave it her best shell because she thought it would like shiny things. Two wrote poems. Or what passed for poems back then. Mostly just words that rhymed with hot. I just sat with it, quiet, still, watching, because I remembered the first night we met it, when the world had been sharp and cruel and full of teeth. And now, the world was warm. Still cruel, sure, but a little less so. A new tribe came for our flame. It was the middle of a moonless night when I heard the first sound, bare feet on frostbitten leaves. Careful, but too many to be animals. I sat up fast, blinking at the fire's quiet glow, and for a second, I thought it had grown a second flame. But it wasn't fire. It was eyes, watching. 6 of them. Maybe more. Figures crouched just beyond the reach of our camp's circle. Not wolves. Not the ghosts our elders warned about. People, and not our people. 2 stood slowly, his hand already gripping the charred stick we kept beside the fire as our ceremonial poker, which in a pinch doubled as a weapon. I reached for a stone. They didn't move, just stood there, staring at our fire like they'd never seen one before. Maybe they hadn't. Then one stepped forward. Tall, gaunt bones like firewood under skin, wrapped in a fur so thin it looked like dried moss. His hands were open. No weapon, just empty. Trembling. "We come for warmth," he said. That was the first time I'd heard someone speak without asking permission first. No greeting, no gift. Just straight to the point. Fire. He wanted our fire. Historians still debate how early humans handled encounters with unfamiliar tribes, trade conflict, or like this guy, polite desperation. We didn't have a guidebook. All we had was the fire between us and a group that looked like it hadn't eaten in days. 2 lowered his stick. "Sit." The others hesitated. Then they joined the tall man circling the fire slowly, like it might vanish if they moved too fast. One woman wept as she stretched her fingers toward the heat. Her skin steamed. Someone brought them meat. Not me. I was too busy watching their hands. But they didn't steal. Not yet. They stayed 2 nights. Didn't say much. Didn't sleep much either. They watched everything, how we fed the fire, stirred the coals, rotated the wood. One of them even mimicked Two's movements. Every single one. It was flattering in a creepy kind of way. Then, on the 3rd night, they were gone. So was one of our fire bundles. A carefully wrapped package of moss bark and a small glowing coal we kept in reserve in case the main flame died. It was how we made sure fire never left us completely. It was precious, and it was gone. No footprints, no warning. Just cold where warmth had been. I felt it first in my chest. A hollow, unfamiliar anger. Not because of the coal itself, but because of what it meant. They hadn't asked. They'd taken. We were no longer just survivors. We were custodians, guardians of something rare. And now, someone had stolen it like it was just another scrap of food. Two didn't speak for a full day. He just stared into the fire, face still, hands clenched. Then he said, "If they misuse it, it could burn a forest. Or a child. Or themselves," I added. He nodded. "Fire is not mercy. Fire is choice." That night, he woke me up and handed me a torch. "Come with me," he said. "We're taking it back." Bizarre fact, Ancient tribes often tracked each other across insane distances just to recover sacred objects. Some even believed fire itself had to be recalled if it was taken unblessed. I didn't believe in curses, but I did believe in consequences. We followed their trail, south through fog-heavy woods and across frozen streams. 2 days, maybe 3. It was hard to count. My feet were blistered. My nose was a constant leak, and I'm pretty sure a squirrel tried to mug me. But finally, we found them, camped beneath a cliff, the stolen coal nestled in a poorly made pit, coughing up smoke like a sick dog. It was barely alive. They didn't know how to feed it. They sat around it cold and quiet like worshippers at the wrong altar. Tu didn't wait. He walked straight in, took the fire with a shovel of bark, and poured it into a proper bundle. They didn't stop him. They just watched. The tall man finally spoke. "We didn't know." "You didn't ask," I said. He lowered his head. "We thought you were gods." I laughed. "We're just cold people who figured out how to carry heat. We could have walked away, taken our fire, vanished back into the hills. But Tu didn't. He crouched beside the pit, rebuilt it with stones, dried it with moss, showed them how to keep the ember fed without choking it. Then he left a second coal behind. "You'll need a second chance," he said. Back at camp, the elders were furious. "You gave them more," one shouted. "They stole another spat." Tu just smiled. They were desperate, and desperate people do dumb things, I added, like lighting goat bladders on fire. That actually got a laugh. Historians point to early fire diplomacy as one of the first examples of human trust between strangers. Not because we were generous, but because fire taught us something bigger. That control wasn't ownership. That power didn't mean hoarding. That light was better shared than hidden. Still, we didn't leave fire unguarded again. We created watchers, named roles, the ember keepers, the flame carriers, the smoke watchers. My sister called herself the toast boss. No one really knew what that meant, but she was enthusiastic. And me, I started carving notches in stone for every day our fire stayed alive. Not for glory, not even for history, just to remind myself that warmth, like memory, could be counted and stolen, but also forgiven. We became fire's children. The day I realized we weren't just surviving anymore, we were evolving, was the day a boy, no older than 7, told me the fire dreams about us. I blinked, unsure if he was joking or just high on roasted root fungus. But then he tossed a carved stick into the flames like it was a prayer, sat cross-legged, and waited for it to respond. And I swear for half a second, the fire flickered blue. We were no longer cave crawlers afraid of the dark. We were thinkers, builders, fire keepers, fire whisperers, children of heat and ember. We didn't just use fire to live. We built a life around it. Every family had its own ember. Every child was taught how to spark dry grass by the age of 5. We sang fire songs, danced in fire circles, named our tools with flame references, ashbone, coal-tooth, burnstick. Tu even started calling his own shadow smoke twin. He needed more sleep. Historians still debate whether fire domesticated humans or the other way around. I think it was mutual. Fire changed our rituals, our roles, our rhythms. It wasn't just a tool, it was a mirror. It showed us who we could be if we stopped running, stopped hiding, and started shaping the world instead of ducking under it. We planted our shelters in wider spaces, built vents to let the smoke out, angled stones to reflect heat. Tu created something he called a wind hut, basically a tent made of animal skins that channeled warm air into sleeping areas. He said, even fire should get to sleep where it's warm. One day, a new family wandered into our territory. Not desperate, not starving. They'd heard stories of warmth of light, of a tribe who could hold the sun in their hands. We welcomed them, not with spears, not with suspicion, but with food and flame. They gasped when they saw the central fire pit, now lined with polished stone, glowing like a heartbeat in the earth. They cried when we handed them a burning branch, wrapped in damp moss and secured with a hollowed bone tube to keep the wind out. They said thank you, not with words, but by staying. We became more than a tribe. We became a fire family. We told stories to children not yet born. About the days when we feared the dark more than each other. About the time fire burned our home and we built it better. About Toe's burn box and my single surviving eyebrow. About the goat bladder explosion. Yes, they still laughed at that one. Bizarre fact. In some parts of the world, people still carry embers from the same fire across generations. Flames kept alive for hundreds of years, passed down like a sacred heartbeat. We didn't know that then, but we felt it. We had become keepers of time, of heat, of legacy. The elders, once so afraid, started sitting closer to the fire again. One even told me, "We used to believe death lived in the dark. Now I think it's the fire that keeps it away." Sometimes I wondered, would we forget what it was like before fire? Would children laugh if we told them we used to eat raw meat, crouched in the cold, crying into our own knees? Maybe that was a good thing. Maybe forgetting was another kind of evolution. Two, for all his wild genius, eventually stepped back. Said fire didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to all of us. "You don't own the sun," he said. "You just keep it from running away at night." I asked him what he wanted to do next. He said, "Figure out how to cook eggs without burning the shell." Dream big, I guess. I took over as Ember Keeper, mostly because I could stay awake longer and had the loudest snore, which apparently scared off wolves. That's leadership in action. And then came the day we buried our first fire. Not because we lost it, but because we chose to end it. It had burned for 300 nights straight. It was tired. We were ready to move. So we let it go, with ceremony, with thanks, with tears. Then we lit a new one, not because we needed to, but because we wanted to. That's when I knew this wasn't just about warmth. This was identity. We were no longer the people of hunger or the people of shadows. We were fire's children, born in heat, forged in ash, carved into something new, something bright. We didn't conquer the world. We lit a path through it, one spark at a time. So now, as the last flames of this story begin to soften and fade, I want you to imagine something. Close your eyes, unless you're driving, obviously, and picture the slow curl of smoke rising into a purple sky, the steady crackle of twigs as fire eats them gently, like it's telling a bedtime story in a language older than words. This wasn't just a tale about flame. It was about becoming human, the kind of human that waits for the storm to pass, then dares to steal its power. The kind that learns how to sit still beside heat without letting it consume them. The kind that doesn't run from fire, but listens to it. Because that's what we were. Not masters, not magicians, just messy, barefoot, half-starved dreamers who figured out how to carry the sun without burning off our fingers. And even now, thousands of years, thousands of sparks, thousands of ashes later, something of that still lives in us, doesn't it? In every birthday candle, every campfire, every silent evening, with only a flickering wick between you and the dark. Fire didn't just change our nights, it changed our nature. It turned fear into ritual warmth, into memory survival, into song. So the next time you see a flame, pause for a second. Say thank you, not out loud maybe, but with your breath, with the part of you that still remembers cold caves and blue lightning. We are still fire's children. We always will be. Now, sleep well. Let the coals rest. Let the night hold you gently. The fire's watching. It always is.